Gallops is a three-generation business. We can't wait to get inspired, and it can't get better than taking a legacy to a higher level to be Mumbai's iconic restaurant loved by all. We present to you our next guest, Yajush Malik from Gallops Restaurant. Amazing. So I think I'm going to start with my questions faster.
Right.
So, yes. And by the way, I love your background. I'm sure that's the Gallups restaurant,
Yes.
and it looks beautiful.
Fresco.
So that's amazing. And amazing. So I'm going to start with my first question.
Okay.
Gallup started in 1986, and now being Mumbai's one of the most iconic destinations, we would like to know how Gallups began. What is the significance behind the name? And how did the idea of having the beautiful restaurant by the race course come up?
So Gallup started in 1986, like you said. My father, his business partners, Jasmine Singh and Iqbal Singh, started it together. The three of them. There were three friends who had this dream of starting a restaurant at some point. And they got to know that there was a tender available in the race course, and the race course wanted a restaurant set up. And so they were invited. There was a bidding that happened, and there were a lot of back and forth that occurred. But yes, fortunately, they got lucky, and at some point, they were invited, and they said, "Look, this is the space, and we would like you to come set up this, a restaurant here." Initially, of course, there were, people who did not take them seriously and said, "Oh, you guys are new. You are not an established brand. What restaurant are you going to set up on this side of the race course? Nobody's going to come here and eat. It's too far inside," and a lot of things. But they persevered. They made sure food was their focus. And Anil Dharkar, the famed journalist, discovered Gallops, and he wrote about Gallops in one of his publications. And that really drew a lot of attention to Gallops, and everybody said, "Oh, there's a new spot to check out in the race course. And it's not just for members of the race course, it's open to the public." And that's how Gallops initially took off. And of course, we have been blessed, and their success came along with all the hard work that they put in. Success followed, and Gallops was built step by step into the format that you see it today. And in the second generation, my brother Mikhail and I, we've joined the company. We now handle operations actively for almost the last 9 years.
That's amazing. I think, as you said, it's not always luck which matters, but hard work and a good strategizing. With,
yes.
As you said, that the food is something which you're focused on, and that's amazing. So I think all of us love Gallops. And we all love coming to your place because we love the space. We love the vibe of your place. So yes, that's amazing.
The name Gallops, as you asked, came so we're located right on the track, right? And when there are races, you will literally see the horses run past. And that's how the name Gallops came about. And in fact, it was my mother who came up with the name, and she says, "Oh, you should call it Gallops," because everybody wanted a horse racing themed sort of, or an equestrian themed restaurant. So that's how the name Gallops came across. And it's something that just stuck. There were in the beginning people who would pronounce it in all sorts of ways, and even today, but well, we've decided to stick with the name now. It's our brand, it's our identity.
Amazing. And I think the name of your brand itself is quite famous amongst people. So that's amazing that of course, it makes no sense naming it as Gallops as it is on the track. That's amazing. Yes. So I'm going to go to my next question. My next question is, as you had said, that you have witnessed different generations of customers right from the late 80s to 90s to 2000s, and now being 2022. How has the customer behavior changed over time with respect to food preference and consumption?
Oh, there have been marked changes. Even so, back in the day, right, in the early 80s, you did not have access to imported ingredients anywhere close to what you have today. You had to make do with domestic products. There were certain shortages in the country because, well, we were not a capitalist economy at that point in time, right? There was no liberalization. That
True.
only came in the 90s. There was a time when there was no Coke,
There was?
right? Coke did not exist. Coca-Cola was banned in India, right? So there were different ways and channels through which something as simple as Coca-Cola had to be sourced.
Wow.
Yes,
I was not aware about this.
there was a time when Coca-Cola was asked to leave the country, right? And even when it came back, there was always a short supply. A lot of things in the early 80s, you wouldn't always have access to everything the way we have it
True.
today. So consumer behavior also was only based on what was available. But the consumer will always want something new and something different. So that's where we innovated. We did the best that we could with quality ingredients, always putting quality first. We'd rather not serve something than serve something mediocre. At the same time, you innovate and you make the best of your limitations. That's always been our philosophy. It continues till date today, where we take pride in what we do. We're not an establishment which is very commercial. It's still very hands-on, very family-run. And we listen to what our consumers want. And even over the years, we've seen people's palates evolve. People have traveled. People have become more and more aware of food trends. The internet has really caused things to sort of explode, when it comes to food. And we've also had to follow those trends and create trends of our own. Like, for example, we created something called a jalebi cheesecake, right? Which
Okay.
is something that we created because my grandmother would take leftover jalebis when I was a child and turn it
Okay.
into a dessert. So I said, listen, we can do better this. Let's add cheesecake instead of regular custard. It worked. It just clicked. People love it. It's one of our
Wow.
most iconic desserts. BuzzFeed rated it as one of the top desserts to have when you visit India.
I'm
So
sure.
we've done what we could. We've also modernized our Indian food. We've gone more regional. You can't get away with just serving butter chicken anymore at a restaurant.
True.
So we've got um, a plethora of Indian flavors. You've got everything from a authentic Kashmiri Rogan Josh to an authentic Kashmiri Nadru Yakhni on the menu to right down, continental stuff, which is reminiscent of the old Victorian days of Calcutta, right? So a lot of old continental Calcutta style food. You've got an Alapi fish curry from Kerala. You've got pepper prawns from Andhra. You've got an Andhra style chicken boti. So we've tried, and you know how everybody says pan Asian? We try and go
True.
pan Indian.
Wow.
We don't want to be just a regular North Indian Punjabi food restaurant.
Interesting. So while you've given the dishes name, I already feel like coming to Gallops and having food right now.
Right.
But I think it's quite interesting. The food is amazing at Gallops. And it's very interesting knowing that y'all are going pan-Indian than pan-Asian. That's an amazing concept. And that is something which not a lot of restaurants have today.
Right. That's the idea, because you have to give consumers something different. People are not willing to settle for the same thing. How many times can you eat the same food over and over again?
True. You can't. I can't.
Exactly.
True. Amazing. And by the way, I love your background noise of the birds humming. It's beautiful.
Yes. we are truly blessed that we have all of this here in the heart of South Bombay.
True. I mean, that's amazing. And Gallops is not only amazing with food, but also ambience. It has both of those things together. So that is what makes it beautiful. So, yes.
Thank you.
So I'm going to go to my third question. Being Mumbai is one of the iconic restaurants, the amazing vibes, the food that's absolutely on point, one of the restaurants most loved by celebrities and now one of the best choices for weddings to take place. Do you feel any kind of pressure to continue being the most preferred choice for different people and different occasions?
Yes, there definitely is. We have to make sure that the guest experience is always top notch. We have to make sure that our decor and our surroundings are all maintained well. We're grateful to have, and we're grateful to our team for all the support that they give us. It's not an easy task maintaining Gallops and making it beautiful. It takes a lot of personal effort, and the team is the one who executes it at the end of the day, right? The tiny nitty-gritty details are things that they have to look into. Weddings have really, in COVID, people have really upped the rate at which they're getting married, and people have all decided to just not wait anymore and take the plunge, right? Because of the uncertainty. That has, for a venue like us, really changed things, where we've had to work within the restrictions of, the COVID guidelines. You have to make sure everyone's safe. It's that much more responsibility, and yet you have to give someone a picturesque wedding. So there have been challenges. The pressure is definitely on all the time. And the pressure is on now to see what happens next year, because we have to reinvent.
True.
We can't continue to just be the way we are and say, this is what it is, take it or leave it. So we have, like, as you can see behind me, we've got these little canopies done with bougainvillea. They're all different concepts that we are trying to see how we can get the best decor and the best guest experience there is for our clients.
All That's amazing. So while you spoke about COVID, during the restrictions while people were getting married, how did you all manage with the restrictions?
Well.
Can you tell me more about the challenges? Yes.
We were one of the restaurants that actually followed most of the rules, all of the rules rather, to the T. There was no gray areas that were left. We believed that everybody's safety and the safety of our staff was more important. For a wedding that happens on one particular day, I cannot jeopardize the entire staff that we have, their family to us, right? And as a result, that turned out to be one of the smarter business decisions, because you had a lot of venues that had to shut down because the staff would test positive.
True.
In our case, because we had a rigorous set protocol in place, right, of testing, sanitization, regular training, the staff would literally, we had, at one point, we even set up steamers in the staff room for people to keep, going and inhaling steam to prevent any sort of, even if they contracted the virus through some contact of a guest, you would immediately inhale steam and you would, your chances of getting infected would be reduced. So we did our best that we could there. The guests were also very difficult to handle, because you had to convince them that, listen, a 50% guest list means a 50% guest list. You cannot have 55 that turns to 75 that turns to 100. We do not allow it. There were instances where we actually stopped guests from entering a banquet venue, and there were experiences where the guest was upset, but we had to hold our ground, because you ultimately, if you allow that to happen, you are spreading COVID.
True. I think that was the right thing. There was a time
where we told the guests, well, listen, if your people have increased, send your family for a drive for an hour till your guests eat and leave. But we're not allowing more than the permitted number of guests in the venue at a time. Yeah, we've had to take harsh steps like that.
And that was right. I think that was the right step to take. And I think that's amazing what the Gallups did during that time. So that's amazing.
Thank you. It's a bitter pill to swallow, but you have to.
You have to. You can't really help it. And I think it was a very crazy time for all of us. And
crazy is putting it lightly.
I can totally understand. But were you all open in the month of April or March the last year during the COVID?
No,
I think that time was the worst time for all of us.
Yes, we were one of the restaurants that would shut down as soon as the order. In fact, all the restaurants had to shut. It was a blanket order on April 5th, if my memory serves me right. Yeah, all restaurants had to shut. We're not a restaurant that does delivery as such. It's a very, very small chunk there is. So, and for everybody's safety, and you have to look at the greater good of the community, that ultimately you do serve all your guests, you serve a community. We serve the city of Bombay. You have to keep everybody's interests in mind ahead of, just financial decisions.
True. And how did you all manage that time? How did you all manage with the businesses?
So it was difficult. had losses that are immeasurable, but you hold on, and that's the risk of doing business, right? You have to. We were lucky and we were fortunate that we managed to survive the pandemic. Most restaurants in Bombay were not so lucky, but it was a mix of intelligent business decisions and God's blessings that we were able to, tide through the time. And we literally just managed to get by. So we're lucky that we just came out on the other side and didn't have to suffer the fate that other establishments did. It was very, very unfortunate. As restaurateurs, a lot of people unfortunately think, oh, you'd be very happy that your competition shut down. No,
That's
listen, we understand the hard work that goes into opening a restaurant and running it.
true.
Our heart breaks when we hear stuff like this.
True. It's better to be practical, and it's better to be safe during that point of time than focusing on competing. And I think that was rightly said by you. So that's amazing. Yes. So I'm going to move on to my next question.
Yes.
So my next question is, you have an academic background from IHM Mumbai and an amazing exposure through work experience with different and highly established hotel groups. How was the entire journey unfolded for you with respect to implementing all your learning at Gallups? What has been the biggest turning point for you individually as a hotelier?
So, to be honest, there is a lot that I have learned with other establishments, and there is a lot that I have learned at Gallops. It was an experience that was extremely humbling. There was no, when we entered and joined Gallops, it was not, oh, you're the boss's child, come run, take over the helm. No. We started at the grassroots. Right from dishwashing to working hands-on in the kitchen, to like answering the phone, giving guests menus, clearing tables, we've done it all, right? So, and that's so important today when you look back at it and you realize that, listen, the reason we're good at what we do is because we understand every aspect of our business.
So you're telling me that you started with dishwashing and the basics.
Yes.
Okay, so the owner of Gallops, Yajush, is telling me that he started from the base, where he started with dishwashing to doing the most minuscule tasks.
Yes, because that is how our parents raised us, right? Our parents built this business from the ground up. They were not going to give their first child to the other children to run. It wasn't going to be like that. That was ingrained in us on day one. We always knew this is the way it's going to go. And I really look back at that and I'm grateful, because today, when there is a problem, I actually know how to solve it. If I was just another hotel school graduate who worked in an organization like a hotel, which was multi-layered, where if your dishwasher conks off, you just pass it on to maintenance. No, here the buck stops at me. So because we've been so hands-on and we've been trained by our parents hands-on, do we have the knowledge to be able to problem solve and manage things effectively? At the same time, working in a larger organization gives you experiences and perspectives that you would not otherwise have. We brought that work culture, the professionalism of a corporate structure, all of those aspects we've brought into Gallops today.
Lovely.
Where you have multi-layer management, you have different tasks dedicated, you have teams, you have protocols in place, everything. So we're completely professionally run today. And those are the values that we have brought in. And at the same time, amalgamated those with the values of a family-run business, which prides itself on taking care of its people, its quality, and its customers. So we've been successful. We forged our own way, really. And God has been very kind that we've been able to amalgamate the two methods of working and the two schools of thought.
Wow, that's amazing. So I think that's quite commendable while you said, the two schools of thought. So while this is a generation-owned business, and the business, as you said, keeps expanding, and
marketing itself, right? There was no social media, there was none of that. With us coming in today, there's a heavy emphasis on our social media presence, making sure that we're doing things that are concurrent and relevant today. That's where the second generation comes in. We've brought in a fair amount of automation that we could. Like, for example, earlier there was only one way to get in touch with Gallops, which was pick up the phone and call them. There was no Google listing, there was no nothing. Today, you have us across social media platforms. You're able to get in touch with us through there. You are able to get in touch with us through WhatsApp. You're able to get in touch with us online. There are multiple platforms and ways that a guest can get in touch with us and contact us. At the same time, we use social media to put our offerings out there and get it to be more accessible and visible to people. The second generation has been able to sort of expand the reach that Gallups served. We've made it as accessible as we can. We've changed the way we plate our food. We've modernized our food a bit. Of course, there have been menu changes that are concurrent. Like, you constantly have menu changes. You introduce new dishes. And the general outlook of how things work has changed. You've got more tech savvy. You've got, like, for example, back in the day, there was a time where Gallups even used to have an automated reservation system. It's just during COVID that all of that went for a toss because of the restrictions. It's hard to tell a computer that, oh, you can only book 50% tables. It doesn't understand that. But we had a lot of automation that the second generation brought in. Gallups was always very tech forward, even with the first generation. Like, for example, we would try and give our team the best equipment possible to run, their operations. We're one of the first restaurants in Bombay to have electronic dishwashers. The dishes at Gallops are not washed by hand. No, they're not. We're one of the first standalone restaurants to have commercial dishwashers. Only 5 stars used to have them. So that same sort of, except with the first generation that was restricted to their knowledge and outlook, they would obviously not have the same sort of understanding of technology and social media that we do today. Right. So that's where the second generation has taken the baton from there and like moved forward and said, we're going to do better things and we're going to expand the reach for our customers.
Lovely. And I think, as you said, that change is always necessary because preferences change, tastes change, and so does the working styles change. So that's amazing. Amazing. So I'm going to go to my next question. My next question is, in today's times, marketing plays a big role. However, for Gallups, what has been working out more, brand strategy or marketing? So from what you had said, would you like to say more to that?
So, in a way, it is a mix of both. Let's put it that way. You have to have a balance. You cannot just say that it is one thing over the other. It has to be the whole picture at large. You cannot have any loose ends anywhere. If you will have loose ends, you will have losses. You will not be able to figure where you're going wrong, right? So while marketing is extremely, extremely important, brand strategy is equally important. You cannot say that, oh, I'm going to make a restaurant without having a brand strategy, without having a vision. I'm going to market it using 100,000 means available to me. You still won't succeed. It's not going to work. You have to have a complete 360-degree solution and a very broad outlook at what you're doing. You cannot say that, oh, I'm going to have one, not have the other. You have to have a marketing strategy in place. You have to have a brand strategy in place, and you have to have a social media strategy in place. You have to work across all platforms to make sure, because each caters to a different segment. When you're working with a restaurant with a client base as diverse as Gallups, you have to cater to different segments. One size does not fit all. You have to, within the solutions, tailor make and find notches and niches that you cater to the right sort of audience that you want. And that's where your brand strategy comes in, because that defines by your audience, what your audience is, so on and so forth, what your values are, what your product is, so on and so forth, what you identify yourself with. And that is then where marketing takes it over from. So they have to work in tandem with one another.
True, that's very true. And from what you have said, I'm quite intrigued to understand the market. as you said that, it's very necessary to define, to have a brand strategy in place, to have the values, the philosophy, and, a strategy in place about the business or the restaurant, from what you have said. So what kind of people do y'all strategize, or what are the ideal customers for you at Gallops?
You have to have a mix. You cannot identify and say that this is my whole and soul and my only target audience. You have to have a mix, because when you have a larger restaurant, you have that much capacity that you need to fill, right? And you are going to have, with India's urbanization, you are going to have people of different walks of life wanting to access the restaurant. Some who may want to access it just once, some who may want to access it occasionally, and some who may want to access it regularly. So you have to be able to find a mix of clientele, and then you have to be able to satisfy the needs of all that client.
True.
Like, there are people who would probably come to Gallops once a week because of where they're located or whatever their reason may be. And there are guests who would probably come in 2 to 3 times a week. You have to have a mix of both, because if you cater to just one, you will put all your eggs in one basket and you will eventually fail. So you have to make sure, and the customer is king at the end of the day. So you have to cater to your customers' needs. You have to get that right. There are going to be people from all sorts of walks of life, from Bombay, not from Bombay, out of Bombay, tourists. You have to make your customer base diverse. And that's what we try and maintain as much as we can. There are so many times we get a guest who says, listen, I'm coming from XYZ part of Bombay, and it's, quite a drive there. I may be late. Please hold a table. On a normal busy weekend, we would release a table after 10 minutes of a guest being late, right? Because you may have people waiting for a table. You can't hold one indefinitely and expect people to, stay standing and wait for a table. But at the same time, if you know that you have a guest coming from far away and it's their first time experience, our team is trained and instructed to try and go the extra mile to accommodate everybody's needs. So that way you do not alienate a customer because they're not regulars, right? Just because they're not a regular, you cannot alienate them and say, oh, listen, we're going to have to treat you differently. No, everybody at Gallops, be it a celebrity, be it a first-time guest, has to have the same experience. We do not believe that, XYZ human gets a preferential treatment. Yes, regulars always on a ground level will have that slight edge because of the familiarity that they share with staff. That is not something that changes. That occurs across the board in any establishment. But we do our best to make sure that our team accommodates everyone as much as possible.
Amazing. And that's rightly said, because we come to Gallops not only for the food, but the ambience and the experience as well. So I think that's rightly said. Amazing. So I'm going to go to my last question. My last question is, for all our listeners who are aspiring to make it big in their respective industry, what's the one quote or mantra that gets you going throughout the journey?
There is no substitute for hard work. It's something that I live by, and I genuinely believe in this. You could be mediocre at what you do, but if you work hard, your chances of success are definitely higher than someone who may be brilliant but does not work as hard.
True. That's amazing. So now I am curious, while you have given that mantra, that amazing mantra, which all my listeners and even I needed, I want to ask you, while working hard, have you been through instances where you have burnt out? I think after COVID, a lot of us have, while we've started getting out, we all have started, getting burnt out. And, there's a certain energy which we are using after 2 years of getting out. So what did you do?
That does happen. But you see, if you're motivated, and I am fortunately motivated with what I do because I love what I do. So even when you have a burnout, you sort of just wait, you reset, and you introspect and say, listen, what do I change? What can I do better? What can I do differently? Right? And at some point you take a break. You just have to reset yourself mentally and physically. You have to get back out there. You have to have that drive to be able to get back out there. And that comes from being happy with what you do.
True. And that is what comes from passion. And that's amazing. That's
Very
amazing.
true.
So, Yajush, you have been very, very inspiring for me. And I'm sure that all our listeners are going to be inspired by you, because I love your space. I love your food. And I'm sure after interviewing you, I'm going to come again for the food and space.
No, we'd love to have you.
Because,
You let me know
it's
whenever.
just got me wanting to come there again. So, thank you so much for being a part of my
Always a
platform.
pleasure.
It has been an honor having you at Gaurafanians, and thank you so much for giving us your time, and from your busy schedule, which I can totally understand. And thank
you for thinking of me, and thank you for having us, and bringing different insights of us and what we do at Gallups to all your listeners. We're truly very grateful.
Thank you so much, Yajush.
All right. You take care. We will see you soon.
Yes.